East Africa vs West Africa. Which region is better? Africa is a very large continent, and just like every other continent, it is divided into sub-regions, particularly the north, south, west, and east. In this video, we shall be putting two of these sub-regions, the west and the east, against each other to see which sub-region comes on top. In this video, we shall be very transparent, and we shall be looking at factors like geography, economy, infrastructure, peace, and overall well-being. Just a little disclaimer before we continue. Both regions are very unique in their own ways, so this is just a fun video to just establish certain facts. With that out of the way, let's move on. West Africa is the western part of Africa. There are 16 countries in West Africa, including Benin, Burkina Faso, Cape Verde, Côte d'Ivoire, the Gambia, Ghana, Guinea, Guinea-Bissau, Liberia, Mali, Niger, Nigeria, Senegal, Sierra Leone, and Mauritania, which is on the crossroad between North and West Africa. But for the purpose of this video, we shall include Mauritania because a vast portion of the country is west. East Africa, on the other hand, is the eastern part of Africa. There is a lot of debate as to how many countries are in East Africa, because sometimes the island of Comoros, Mauritius, and Seychelles are often considered as East Africa, and sometimes they are not. Because they are not in mainland Africa, we shall exclude them for this list. So therefore there are 11 countries in East Africa, including Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda, Somalia, Ethiopia, Eritrea, Djibouti, Rwanda, Burundi, Sudan, and South Sudan. Let's begin with geography and demography. The great difference between East Africa and West Africa are the oceans bordering both sub-regions. The Atlantic Ocean borders the western part of Africa, while the Indian Ocean borders the eastern part. In terms of land area, and considering the countries cited in each region, East Africa has a larger surface area than West Africa. The geography of West Africa is characterized by a mix of mountains, plateaus, and lowlands. The region is home to several rivers, including the Niger, Senegal, and Gambia rivers, which are important for transportation, irrigation, and fishing. The Sahara Desert, the largest hot desert in the world, covers a significant portion of West Africa, while the Sahel, a semi-arid region that lies between the Sahara Desert and the savannas to the south, covers much of the rest of the region. The coastal areas of West Africa are known for their tropical rainforests and mangrove swamps. The climate in West Africa is generally hot and humid, with a rainy season and a dry season each year. The region is also prone to droughts and desertification, which can have significant impacts on agriculture and food security. East Africa is a region in Africa that is located on the eastern coast of the continent along the Indian Ocean. It is bordered by the Horn of Africa to the north, the Great Rift Valley to the west, and Southern Africa to the south. The geography of East Africa is diverse, with a mix of highlands, plateaus, and lowlands. The region is home to many mountains, including Mount Kilimanjaro and Mount Kenya, which are the highest peaks in Africa. The Great Rift Valley, which stretches from Syria to Mozambique, passes through East Africa, creating a series of lakes, including Lake Victoria, one of the largest freshwater lakes in the world. The region is also known for its savannas, forests, and deserts. Generally, East Africa is cooler than West Africa. This is because East Africa has higher elevations and more mountainous terrain, which leads to cooler temperatures. For example, the East African countries of Ethiopia and Kenya have highland areas that experience relatively cool temperatures throughout the year. In contrast, West Africa is low in elevation and has a more tropical climate, with higher temperatures and humidity. However, it is important to note that both regions have diverse climates, and there are areas within each region that can experience cooler or warmer temperatures depending on the season and location, but overall East African countries have a more milder and conducive climate than most West African countries. With regards to population, West Africa has more people than East Africa. Nigeria, located in West Africa alone, have more population than 6 East African countries combined. West Africa has an estimated population of about 418 million people, while East Africa has a population of about 350 million people. West Africa, however, has a younger population, with Niger and Mali having some of the youngest population in the world. Economy. West Africa has a larger economy than East Africa. In fact, the economy of West Africa almost doubles that of East Africa. The economy of West Africa is diverse and varies by country, but it is generally characterized by a mix of agriculture, natural resources, and services. Some of the largest economies in West Africa include Nigeria, Ghana, Ivory Coast, and Senegal. Nigeria has the largest economy in Africa, with a GDP of approximately $514.05 billion as of 2021. Agriculture is a major contributor to the economies of many West African countries, with crops such as cocoa, coffee, and cotton being important exports. West Africa is also home to significant mineral resources, including gold, diamonds, and oil. Services such as banking, telecommunications, and tourism are also important sectors in many West African countries. West African countries have a combined nominal GDP of about $787 billion. The economy of East Africa is very similar to that of West Africa, but it is generally characterized by a mix of agriculture, natural resources, and services. Some of the largest economies in East Africa include Kenya, Tanzania, and Ethiopia. Agriculture is a major contributor to the economies of many East African countries, with crops such as coffee, tea, and horticultural products being important exports. The region is also home to significant mineral resources, including gold, diamonds, and oil. Services such as tourism, telecommunications, and financial services are also important sectors in many East African countries. There has been a recent surge in investment in the region, particularly in infrastructure projects such as roads, railways, and ports. East African countries have an estimated nominal GDP of about $412 billion. So going by GDP, West Africa is richer than East Africa. Standard of living. Africa in general, and West and East Africa in particular, have some of the poorest countries in the world. In fact, the 10 top poorest countries in the world comes from both regions. For the purpose of this video, we shall further dissect both regions to see which has a better standard of living. To better determine the standard of living, we shall look at the GDP per capita and Human Development Index. If we are to do head count per country, East Africa generally enjoys a better standard of living based on their countries. Amongst the 11 countries in East Africa, just about 4 have a GDP per capita lower than 1,000, while West Africa has more countries with GDP per capita lower than $1,000. Infrastructure. When it comes to infrastructures in Africa, the whole continent is still lacking behind. However, the eastern part of Africa has made significant progress when it comes to infrastructures. There have been several developmental projects in East Africa. Some of the most planned and developed cities are found in East Africa. Examples include Addis Ababa, Nairobi, Dar es Salaam, and Kigali. These cities have some of the best skylines, developed railways, and overall better transportation systems. The infrastructure in West Africa is generally less developed compared to other regions of the world. However, there have been some improvements in recent years. Some vibrant and developed cities in West Africa include Abidjan, Accra, Lagos, and Dakar. There are a few major highways and railways in West Africa, but they are not well maintained and often suffer from congestion and delays. Airports and seaports are also limited and can be difficult to access in some areas. Many countries in West Africa rely on fossil fuels for energy, but there has been a growing interest in renewable energy sources such as solar and wind. However, the infrastructure for these sources is still in its early stages. Kenya Airways and Ethiopian Airlines are two of the best airlines in Africa, and both airlines are owned by Eastern African countries, whereas the western part is struggling with their aviation industry. When it comes to infrastructure, both regions are the least developed compared to the northern and southern part of Africa. However, vis-a-vis each other, the eastern part of Africa has more organized and developed infrastructures than the western part of Africa. Peace and security. The western part of Africa has suffered from terrorist attacks in recent years, particularly from the Boko Haram terrorist group. Most countries in the West, including Nigeria, Mali, and Benin, has greatly been affected by this group, which has hampered peace and security in the sub-region. This is in no way saying that there are no peaceful countries in West Africa, because countries such as the Gambia, Ghana, Sierra Leone, Senegal, and Togo are relatively safe. The level of peace in Eastern Africa varies from country to country and from region to region. Just like the West, some areas within Eastern Africa have been affected by political instability, civil conflicts, and terrorism, while others have remained peaceful and stable. For example, countries such as Kenya, Tanzania, and Rwanda have experienced relative peace and stability in recent years, although they have faced some challenges such as political tension and occasional acts of violence. On the other hand, countries such as Somalia and South Sudan have experienced prolonged conflicts and instability, making them amongst the most challenging places to live in terms of peace and security. Overall, while Eastern Africa has its share of challenges in terms of peace and stability, there are also many peaceful areas within the region where people can live and work safely. To declare the winner in this category is actually very tough, but going by the Global Peace Index of 2022, 4 West Africa countries ranks amongst the top 10 most peaceful countries in Africa, while just Tanzania in East Africa made the top 10 list. So West Africa wins this category, despite the fact that these two regions have their similarities and differences. They face almost the same challenges. Some of the common challenges faced by both regions include: 1. Poverty and income inequality. Many African countries have high levels of poverty and income inequality, with a large proportion of the population living below the poverty line. 2. Food insecurity and malnutrition. Many African countries are affected by droughts, floods, and other environmental factors that can lead to food insecurity and malnutrition. 3. Limited access to healthcare. Many African countries have weak healthcare systems, with limited access to medical facilities, medications, and trained professionals. 4. Political instability and conflicts. Several African countries have experienced political instability and conflicts in recent years, which can lead to displacement, violence, and insecurity. 5. Limited access to education. Many African countries have low literacy rates and limited access to education, which can limit opportunities for individuals and hinder economic development. 6. Environmental degradation and climate change. Many African countries are affected by environmental degradation, deforestation, and climate change, which can have a significant impact on the economy and people's livelihoods. 7. Infrastructure deficits. Many African countries have inadequate infrastructure, such as roads, bridges, and power grids, which can hinder economic growth and development. 8. Corruption and weak governance. Corruption is a significant issue in many African countries, which can hinder economic growth and development, and undermine public trust in government institutions. To conclude, it's really tough to determine which region is better. But if I were to choose between both regions, I will choose the eastern part of Africa, based on the fact that they have a better climate, better economies, and better infrastructures. Thanks for watching this video. Please subscribe to the channel for more videos.